Welcome to Last Minute Lecture. This free chapter overview is designed to help students review and understand key concepts. These summaries supplement, not replace, the original textbook and may not be redistributed or resold. For complete coverage, always consult the official text.
I mean, take yourself back to the early days of 2020.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. The great Clorox wipe shortage. We were all, furiously scrubbing our groceries and quarantining our mail because everyone was terrified of these fomites.
Right, those inanimate objects that carry disease. And eventually the CDC realized wiping down cereal boxes was totally overkill for COVID-19 since the virus degrades pretty fast on surfaces.
Yeah, exactly. But that absolute panic really proved something, didn't it? Like, understanding how to actually control microbes in the environment it's a huge deal. It's a foundational pillar of microbiology.
It absolutely is. And it's a world where human intuition, just guessing what works, often completely fails us.
Which is exactly why we are here today. So welcome to the deep dive. Today is a very special, highly customized exam prep session just for you. Because, you're a college student staring down microbiology for the first time, and our mission today is to tackle Chapter 8 of Prescott's Microbiology.
The 12th edition, right?
Right. Control of microorganisms in the environment. We are going to unpack this chapter in the exact order it appears, breaking down the dense terms into plain English.
Because before you start throwing chemicals around, you got to know what dead or safe actually means. People in the real world use words like disinfectant and antiseptic interchangeably all the time.
Oh, constantly. But if you do that on this exam, you are going to lose points. So let's lay out the vocabulary hierarchy. What is the absolute top tier of clean?
The top tier is sterilization. That is the complete and total destruction or removal of all living cells, spores, and viruses.
So zero life.
Zero. If it's sterile, it is a biological blank slate.
Okay, but we obviously can't sterilize, a kitchen counter.
No, and you wouldn't need to. So you drop down a level to disinfection. This means you're killing or removing pathogens, stuff that causes disease, usually on inanimate objects. But, and this is key for the test, disinfection does not guarantee you've killed the really tough stuff, like bacterial endospores.
And disinfectants are for objects. You wouldn't use them on a person.
Right, exactly. When you apply chemicals to living tissue to prevent infection, that is antisepsis. Antiseptics can't be as harsh as disinfectants, or they, destroy human tissue.
Disinfectant for the table, antiseptic for the skin. Got it. And then there's sanitization, right? Which is basically just reducing microbes to public health safe levels, like a restaurant fork.
Spot on. Now, the text also gives a great way to decode these agents using suffixes.
Oh, yeah, the assassin versus the pause button.
Exactly.
So if an agent ends in tiocide, like a bactericide or fungicide, I always picture an assassin. It actually kills the target. But if it ends in static, like bacteriostatic, it just hits pause.
Right, it alters the environment so the microbes can't grow. But if you remove that static agent, they just hit play again and keep multiplying.
Okay, so let's look at the assassins, the ones that actually kill. If I pour bleach on bacteria, I kind of picture them all just dropping dead instantly.
Yeah, that's a super common misconception. But microbial death isn't a single switch. It's an exponential mathematical process.
Okay, explain that.
Well, picture figures 8.2 and 8.3 from the text. If you look at a graph where the vertical axis is the number of survivors and the horizontal axis is time, the line doesn't just cliff dive straight down.
It doesn't.
No, it drops diagonally. It's a downward slope. They die by the same fraction at constant intervals. So say 90% die in the first minute. You don't wipe out the rest in minute 2. You just kill 90% of the remaining survivors.
Oh, wow. So you're just chipping away at fractions.
Exactly. Which brings us to two massive concepts to the exam. The d-value, or decimal reduction time. That's the time it takes to kill 90% of the microbes.
So if I have 1 million bacteria, the d-value is the time it takes to get down to 100,000.
You got it. And then there's the z-value, which is the temperature change you need to reduce that population by 90%.
Okay, d-value is time, z-value is temperature change. But here's a philosophical question for you. How do we even know a microbe is dead?
Yeah. The text brings up a really terrifying concept here. Viable but non-culturable bacteria, VBNC.
The sleeper agents.
Literally. In harsh conditions, some bacteria don't die. They just shut down their metabolism and play dead. In a lab test, they look totally lifeless. They won't grow.
But if they get inside a warm, nutrient-rich human host...
They wake right up and cause an infection. It's wild.
That is deeply unsettling. Okay, well, let's look at how we physically try to remove them anyway. The text starts with physical methods before we get into chemicals.
Right. Brute force, filtration, heat, and radiation.
So filtration, that doesn't kill anything, right? It just traps them.
Exactly. Like figure 8.4 shows, a membrane filter is basically a microscopic sieve for liquids. The pores are like 0.2 micrometers wide. Liquid goes through, bacteria gets stuck.
And we use those for liquids that would just get ruined by heat. But what about air? The book has this great text box, "Come fly with me."
Yes, HEPA filters. High-efficiency particulate air filters. People think airplane cabins are flying petri dishes, but they're incredibly safe from aerosolized viruses because of HEPA filters. They're these fiberglass depth filters that catch over 99.9% of particles.
Combined with rapid air exchange, it's actually super clean. Unless the guy next to you sneezes directly on you.
Well, yeah, the filter can't stop point-blank range.
Fair enough. Okay, so what if we just want to cook them? Heat. If I boil water, is it sterile?
No. Boiling kills vegetative cells, but it will not kill endospores. Endospores will survive boiling water for hours. If you want true sterilization with heat, you need moist heat under pressure.
The autoclave.
The autoclave. It's essentially a hardcore industrial pressure cooker. You pump steam into a sealed chamber, push the air out, and the pressure raises the boiling point of water. At 15 psi, it hits 121 degrees Celsius.
Which just melts everything.
It degrades nucleic acids, denatures proteins, melts membranes. Spores don't stand a chance.
But I can't put a glass of milk in an autoclave. Or wine.
Right, which is why we have pasteurization. Controlled heating to kill specific pathogens and slow down spoilage without ruining the flavor.
And there's also tyndallization, which I love. It's intermittent steaming over 3 days for stuff that can't handle the high autoclave heat.
It's basically setting a biological trap. Day 1, you steam it, killing the active cells. The surviving spores think the coast is clear and they germinate. Day 2, you steam them again while they're vulnerable. Day 3, you finish off the stragglers.
You literally trick them into waking up so you can kill them. That's brilliant. What about radiation? Like UV light versus gamma rays?
Well, UV light is lethal because it causes thymine dimerization in the DNA.
Okay, so if DNA is a zipper and thymine is one of the teeth.
UV light makes 2 adjacent thymine teeth fuse together, putting a massive kink in the zipper. The DNA can't replicate and the cell dies. But UV has terrible penetrating power. It can't even get through glass.
So you'd use it for like surface air in a lab. But if I need to sterilize a packaged plastic syringe, I have to use gamma rays. Ionizing radiation.
Exactly. Gamma rays blast right through the packaging to cold sterilize medical plastics, antibiotics, and even stuff like ground beef.
Okay, so we've got heat, filters, and radiation. But I obviously can't put a hospital room in an autoclave, and I can't gamma ray a patient's arm. That leads us straight into Section 3, chemical control.
The heavy hitters. And there are quite a few. Let's run through them. We've got phenolics, which Joseph Lister started using back in the day. Now they're in Lysol. They denature proteins.
Then there are the alcohols, like ethanol. And here's that wild fact from the intro. 70% ethanol is actually more effective than 95% pure ethanol.
Because water is required to effectively denature the proteins. Without enough water, the pure alcohol just evaporates, or it sears the outside of the cell and forms a protective crust.
Wait, really? A crust?
Yeah, it protects the inside of the bacteria, so watering it down actually helps it penetrate.
That's crazy. Okay, what else? Halogens, like iodine and chlorine?
Right. Iodine is a classic antiseptic, but it stains and stings. So we often use iodophores, like betadine, which slow release the iodine to save your skin. And then there are heavy metals, like silver, which is toxic, but used in burn creams.
And then we get to QACs. Quaternary ammonium compounds. The text calls them amphipathic cationic detergents, which is a mouthful.
It is. Amphipathic just means it has a split personality. One end loves water, the other end loves fat.
And cell membranes are made of fat, so the fat-loving end jams into the bacteria's membrane.
While the water-loving end stays outside, it acts like a chemical crowbar, physically ripping the cell membrane apart.
Chemical crowbar, I like that. Now, what about aldehydes, like glutaraldehyde? Figure 8.9 shows it cross-linking proteins.
Right. It chemically locks the cell's vital proteins and peptidoglycan together.
I always picture microscopic handcuffs. It handcuffs all the internal machinery together so the bacteria just paralyzes and dies.
That's a great way to visualize it. But say you have something super delicate, like a plastic catheter in a sealed pouch. You can't autoclave it, and you can't soak it in liquid aldehyde.
You use gas, the ethylene oxide sterilizer.
EO gas. It looks like an autoclave, but uses this highly toxic, explosive gas that penetrates the plastic wrap. It's incredibly effective for heat-sensitive plastics, but you have to heavily aerate the equipment afterward so you don't poison the patient.
And the text also mentions chlorine dioxide gas, which they used to decontaminate the U.S. Senate after the 2001 anthrax attacks.
Yeah, and vaporized hydrogen peroxide, too. They're powerful tools.
But here's the thing. We have this huge arsenal of chemicals. How do we know which one to pick? Because a pristine lab test is totally different from, say, a dirty hospital floor.
There are 6 factors that alter a biocide's effectiveness: population size, composition, concentration, contact time, temperature, and local environment.
The local environment seems huge. Like if a surface has organic matter on it, like dirt or blood, it just soaks up the chemical before it hits the bacteria.
Exactly. Or even worse, biofilms.
Oh, right, biofilms. The bacteria form this organic slime that acts like a bunker.
A literal bunker. You usually have to physically scrub the surface to break up the biofilm before the chemical can even do its job.
So how do they test if these chemicals actually work in the real world?
Well, historically, they used the phenol coefficient test, comparing the chemical to pure phenol in a test tube. But like you said, that's not realistic. So now they rely more on the use dilution test.
How does that work?
They dry the bacteria onto small stainless steel carriers to simulate a hard surface, dunk them in the disinfectant, and then see if anything survives. It's a much better simulation.
Okay, so we've done physical force, we've done chemical warfare, but the text ends with something straight out of sci-fi: biological control.
Yes, pitting biology against biology, using natural predators to kill pathogens.
Like Bordella vibrio, that predatory bacteria that literally hunts down and eats other bacteria from the inside. They want to spray that on poultry farms.
They're considering it, yeah. And then there are bacteriophages.
Phages, the viruses that only infect bacteria. They look like little lunar landers.
They land, inject their DNA, hijack the bacteria, and burst it open.
Yeah.
And the FDA has actually already approved a bacteriophage spray to kill Listeria and Salmonella on human food.
Wow. And if you don't want to use the whole virus, the text talks about enzybiotics.
Right. Purified proteins from the phages. They just slice open the gram-positive cell walls directly.
Which really brings up a wild thought for you to chew on before your test. The future of medicine might involve going to the doctor with an infection, and instead of an antibiotic, they prescribe you a dose of live viruses to drink.
It completely flips our understanding of viruses equal bad, right?
Yeah.
In the microscopic world, the enemy of your enemy is your best friend.
Exactly. Well, you now have the blueprint for Chapter 8. You know your D-values, your autoclaves, your chemical crowbars, and your viral assassin.
You're going to do great.
Truly. On behalf of the Last Minute Lecture team, thank you for letting us crash your study session. Good luck on that microbiology exam.